let's get it started. How would you describe yourself?
Well, my name is Sanita Fejzić. I suppose everyone sort of starts with the name. And in my case, well, I feel like the name says a lot in Canada because it's sort of out of context, especially my last name, Fejzić. If I can spell it properly with the capital on the C, it sort of signals that I'm not from here, although I do feel that I'm sort of settling in this place and feeling very uncomfortable with the verb settling and the history of being a settler and having come into shock, arriving into Canada as an immigrant. I was born next Yugoslavia. There was a genocide with the Balkan Wars in 1992 till 1995. So I was a refugee for many years. Actually, I didn't even have a legal status like refugee, which is much less precarious than what we were. The way we think about Canada, when you have no legal status or anything like that, you think, wonderful, here's a country that advertises itself as very diverse, very multicultural. We're finally going to be safe, etc. So I came into Canada with this glorious feeling of finally no more war, etc. There's no genocide here, nothing like that. And then, part of the language used by Immigration Canada and even Immigration Ontario is settling comfortably. And so then the unlearning and understanding that I'm not an immigrant, that I'm actually an immigrant settler, and trying to sort of situate myself within that. I think just from rambling, you can see that who I am is someone who is constantly deconstructing wherever she finds herself. I think that when you go through deeply troubling beginnings, whether that's war, genocide, just sort of having a legal status for most of your childhood and being an unwanted body, politically at least, I think culture is the one thing that always made me feel the same, alive. You could enter into a story and you can easily share that. And entering into a new culture gives you a sense of belonging. So I'm someone who loves culture. I love all mediums. I love theater. I love, performance art. I think part of who I am is someone who's constantly creating and then uncreating, building, unbuilding, and exploring myself through art.
And when you arrived in Ottawa, that was actually the year of the ice storm, right? So that was your first experience of Canada. What was that like for you?
It was very cold. You come here and the first thing that you notice is, oh, I can't speak English. This is a problem. We were told that Ottawa was bilingual, and I was put in a French immersion school, but everybody was Anglophone, and it was not cool to speak in French. So the first thing I remember from the ice storm is it's this association with being a newcomer, not being able to speak English, and this really fluorescent pink and green snowsuit that was one piece that was completely socially acceptable in Switzerland, where we had no real winters. And I don't know where my mom got this, but someone must have told her it's really cold in Canada. So she got me this suit, and I arrived in Canada my first day of school with this fluorescent suit, not being able to speak the language. So the ice storm is this hilarious moment of not fitting in and being a foreigner and setting out like a 1980s bad hairstyle. And at the same time, it was this moment of anxiety and confusion because people were losing their electricity. There was army on the streets intervening, and that looks a lot like the beginning of the Siege of Sarajevo, this kind of sudden military presence, loss in electricity, loss in water, and just this confusion. And even though they're two very different things, and we had enough, Bosnian-speaking people to tell us there is no war, it was just really anxiety-riddling and just so cold.
You often discuss the relationship between human beings and non-human beings, including animals, plants, and elements. And I see you have a lot of plants in your background right now. How does that figure in your writing? Can you give me sort of a synopsis of that?
I was just telling you I'm from ex-Yugoslavia. So Yugoslavia is a communist country. And I don't know, maybe it was in the air or something, but I feel like most people who are from ex-Yugoslavia who experience growing up in socialism just have a natural aversion to physical and psychological exploitation. But it's an easy next step to think about exploitation and caring about towards other beings. And so for me, having been on the margins and being incredibly sensitive to social justice and how it's entangled with ecological justice, I can't help but include in my circle of care other than human beings. And you talked about non-human animals, but this also includes land. It also includes elements like bodies of water. And we know also from grade school that we have more non-human bacteria than we do human cells. So we have more non-human agents with their wills and desires within what we call the human body than we do human cells. So what that does for me is it troubles this very, very grounded idea of an autonomous and separate self. So to talk about enlarging a circle of care, or even understanding the self as plural, not just plural between us humans and our discourses and our systems of cultural production, or even our legal system, but porous with other than humans. Now, that's a lot harder to discipline a single body like that. It's a lot harder to create a society that's so much more communal. And I don't mean that in the Yugoslavian communist sense necessarily, but just philosophically and at the level of being. How do we create stories that are a lot more generous in terms of a plurality of selves? And that's kind of what I'm exploring in my work now. In The Blissful State of Surrender, for example, which is a play about a Bosnian-Canadian family and the sort of intergenerational traumas, and the comedy of just children and parents who now have basically two different cultural backgrounds and are no longer able to speak on the same terms. Well, you notice how this family has been completely shaped, not just by war, but by their environments as well. So you have the metaphor of being snowed in as a metaphor for being sieged. And you realize how much they co-create each other.
What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Wow. I think perfect happiness looks like happy relationships and inner peace.
What is your favorite piece of writing?
Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own is one of my favorite pieces of writing because it's so seminal to the way I think.
What is your greatest fear?
Climate change.
Which living person do you most admire?
Gosh, I guess maybe my mom. Yeah.
What performance is most memorable to you?
I have to say that for some reason, the answer is always Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest.
What is your motto?
Everyone needs a motto, right? Okay, my motto, what is it? Maybe it's like, I'm bringing ethics back. You know, like Justin Timberlake brought sexy back. I'm bringing ethics back. Ethical relations between each other and ethical relations between beings. That would be really nice. I would love to bring ethics back. And, I've always wanted an opportunity to bust that line out. So thank you.